So I was talking to a buyer yesterday, and we were talking about the quality of listings. We were debating the quality of active listings in Nashville. Now, if you've been following, our active listings have been skyrocketing. We're at 9,049. It's up 36%. But if you talk to buyers, they don't feel like it's up 36%. And I'm like, well, why is that? So I started digging into this. And what I found was pretty wild. One is that there are thousands, and I'm not even exaggerating, thousands of sellers that were discouraged, took their listing off, and are no longer active. This could potentially be a powder keg of sellers. We're going to talk about it, and I'd love to get your perspective on it. At the same time, the quality of active listings here, there's a lot of stale listings that don't appear to be stale. In other words, the days on market might say 14, but it's really been relisted 3 times with 2 price drops, and you would never know it. And so that was kind of frustrating for me. So what I did was I went back, I took a sample of data, I went back to 2023, and I analyzed it to figure out just how big of a problem the stale inventory is and just how many sellers are out there that may not be showing up in active listings, but will be coming back in due time. So what I did was I picked Davidson County, Nashville, it's the heart of Nashville, site built, which is basically your house in a yard, and existing resale. Okay, this means no new builds, no to be builts. There's a lot of address manipulation that can happen, and I needed to use the address as my key identifier. And so by paring down to this specific subtype, I kind of eliminated a lot of noise that I would get. Now, this was a tricky analysis, so it's not perfect. We've got to account for that, but it's going to get us directionally correct, and I'm going to show you the data so that you can see. And again, this is an analysis I would love your perspective on because I can see both sides, how people are going to interpret this. I want to hear how you're going to interpret this. Now, first things first, of this group, we have 1,306 active listings right now, 410 under contract with 555 price cuts. Now, a couple other things about this group. We can see over time, we are well above where we were last year. We're talking about almost a 50% increase, 1,306. Last year, we were at 1,921. So that's pretty wild. Price per foot, it's basically flat. It's been flat for several years. That's why it looks like such a noisy chart. But I mean, you can see it's up. Price per foot is up from 2024, but down from 2022. We know that the list price is actually about to go below 2022, the median list price, which is pretty wild. Contract volume, though, contract volume's up. It's up compared to where it was a year ago, although we did have a much slower April into May. Shocker, right? Who knows what's going to happen with all the turmoil in the Middle East, but right now it is up. I think that's some of the buyers from April coming back in, personal opinion there. And so you can see, by the way, did I say sales price was down? Look at that. It's down. Median sales price is down. Median price per foot is up. I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, basically prices have been flat, really. I mean, you just look, they're just churning back and forth. There's no real change in price. Although again, my buyers think it's getting more expensive, and maybe it is. It is on certain houses. Let's go back to these active listings. There are 1,306 active listings. But if we figure how many of them have canceled and been relisted, how many of them are fresh? So what I did here was I went back and counted and created a cumulative days on market metric for these listings. And I found that 642 of them would be less than 55 days old. And that's just the way this Excel created this Pareto here, is they just used 55, which is fine. It's about 2 months. And so to me, more than half the inventory is older than 2 months. It's pretty stale. It's not moving fast. Now, maybe, 3-4 months is normal in the good old days, but to me, anything over 2 months feels stale. Nonetheless, if you consider that, maybe, another 270, maybe 2/3 of the inventory is fresh, but there's a third of it that's just, it's not moving, and it's not been moving, and it's pretty stale. It's not helpful inventory. People aren't buying it. And I think that's important, because if you're a buyer, that inventory is not helping you at all. And likely a good chunk of this 270 is not helping you. That means you're really only looking at the first 642 active listings, is that's like the more real inventory. And the problem is is that if you're looking at that 642 and there's 410 under contract, it kind of only feels like there's about a month and a half supply of inventory. It's a lot tighter than it feels and that it looks. But here's the other side of the coin. If we go back and we say, okay, but how many people in the past 2 years have listed as a site build existing in Davidson County and then got discouraged and took theirs off the market and haven't relisted since? I got a number shockingly high. I got 3,892. Now, I will tell you, this is a little bit tricky of an analysis to do. So even though there's 3,892, I think probably 1 in 5 of these sold, either they weren't tagged correctly, the address wasn't exactly the same on multiple listings, and so that might fall through the cracks. In other words, it might show up on here as not sold, even though it's sold eventually. And the other is it may have been off market, where it sold off market and not on the MLS. And so given that, I think we can say this is directionally correct, but 1 in 5 probably isn't going to be accurate. And here, I'll show you what I mean. So let's just take some of these. So here's 24 of them. Okay, so I'm going to pop these into Real Tracks here, and here we got, here's Gray Bar Lane. $2 million homes can be built on future lot, best used property. So this is like basically selling a lot for $1.2 million. Crazy. They canceled the listing after they raised the price. Kind of funny. And you can see never sold. So that's a classic example of one that never sold. Here's one for $1.7 million. This is, it sold in February. Okay. It sold in February for $890. There might be, the address might not be exactly the same. So there are some that show up like this. And that's why I was saying you can't assume that every single one of these is going to be accurate. I don't think you have to realize that there are potentially thousands of listings that could be coming on the market in the next year or two that are just discouraged sellers. Now, if you're a half glass empty kind of person, you might say, oh, this is a powder keg of inventory, or optimistic about prices dropping. I mean, who wouldn't love a price drop if you're trying to buy? You're going to see this and think, oh man, powder keg of inventory. This is going to put massive downward pressure on prices. Now, here's my perspective on that. Look at this one, canceled after it listed in February, and now it's relisted at 1.1. So you can see they started at 1.5. My goodness, now they're at 1.1. What's so funny about this? Let's go to the current listing. This is what I'm talking about. This listing looks like it's 8 days on market, okay? But it's actually, if you look at it, the cumulative days on market are, hundreds of days. I mean, it spent 86 days on market before they canceled the listing. Here it is right here. 111 days on market here. You can see for this one. And yeah, that makes sense, right? It says 111, but look, eight days on market. That's why I hate. Anyways, I don't want to go on. But here's my point. You can see that these are in the all price points. Here's one, $599, expired. Let's see what happened with it. Maybe it sold eventually. No, didn't sell eventually. 71 days on market, 40 days on market. And then what happened to it after that? It's been off the grid for, almost a year now, and maybe 6-8 months. What happened to it? What happened? Is it empty? Did they rent? Did they just decide not to sell? Here's one, Victoria Park says days on market 1. Do we really think it's 1? No, we don't. Let's see what it is. Yeah, look, they tried to sell it in November. They tried to sell it in, look at that, expired. And now it's active at 1.8. So we're talking about almost 200 days on market, and it says 1 day on market. Here's the point. Here's what I want. Here's my whole point in this. Let's assume it's 3,000. Let's just be conservative. Say 800 of them are wrong, Ethan, for date or something went wrong. And we know there's some. 3,000. Okay, if we go back to this number right here, there are only 1,306 active, but there are 3,000 sellers for this specific type in the past 2 years. That means there's 1,700, at least 1,700 more out there. This inventory could double just from people that have listed in the past 2 years if they decide to list. You can do one of two camps. I want to hear what you have to say. But my personal opinion is I think these are not distressed sellers. They're not going to move it until they get their price. This puts a ceiling on price appreciation for the next 5 years. We see negative real price growth where prices stay basically flat to slightly elevated. They aren't going to sell until they need to sell. They just don't care. I think that's the case because they have such a low interest rate. Now, could there be a trigger event? Could we be going into recession? Could the turmoil in the Middle East, could it all change? Sure, it could. But right now, that's my personal opinion about what's happening. Now, the other side of the coin is people could say, oh no, you're going to see people afraid prices are going to tank. They're going to panic sell. It's going to tank prices. And then we're going to get a much lower Nashville home price. I think that's less likely for a couple of reasons. One, if that was going to happen, I think it would have already happened. What we saw was the opposite in 2022. The people that panic sold got burned. And I think that set a tone for the current market is don't panic sell. Take your time. You'll get your price. It just may take a year or two longer. Maybe you rent it for less than what you think it should go for. But the truth is your mortgage payment is probably less by a large margin. It's easier to rent. But again, I'll let you guys determine. I want you all to interpret it, not take my judgment for it, because the truth is I have no idea. I don't know where price is going. I am constantly surprised by this market. And so are we about to get a powder keg of inventory? Are prices going to crash? Or are we just going to be a slow burn for the next decade where we just dance between positive and negative prices while incomes and rents catch up? I'm going to let you decide. You tell me. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Look forward to seeing you next Saturday.